A couple things before we get started. We do have a quorum, and we'll get the rest of the people here in a minute. But I want to get started. We have 5 bills potentially considered today. One thing to be consistent between committees on the House side at least, we've changed our rules to allow House members to participate virtually. But this is the last meeting we'll be allowing any virtual testimony. Just due to a number of issues, for many years we had only in-person testimony. And I think it's best if we go back to that and again be consistent with all the House committees are going to that. So I wanted to make that announcement. Those people who are going to testify virtually, they're still welcome today. We will allow some virtual testimony in extreme circumstances, but that has to be cleared with the chairman at least several days before the committee meets, and it has to be for a good reason. And specifically for agencies watching, agencies will be required to be here in person. So with that, let's get started. Diana, would you please take roll?
Okay, Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Burt.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative McGuire.
I don't know, excused, I guess.
Representative Obermueller.
Here.
Well, actually, he's here.
Yes, he is. I can see him.
Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Stivar.
Present.
Chairman Burkhart.
Here. Okay. First bill for our consideration will be House Bill 44. Representative Newsom, please explain your bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Burkhart. This is a bill to clean up some vehicle titling issues that got left behind on mobile homes several years ago when we changed the statute that allowed for the conjunctive and or ownership status. Mobile homes are defined under the motor vehicle statutes and require title for transfer of ownership or to be moved from one property to another. There are also a couple places that were left behind in the previous bill that require the county treasurer to provide a sales tax receipt to be supplied to the applicant when paying tax on new vehicle purchase. In Section 3 on the last 2 pages of this cleanup bill is the application for duplicate title process. Presently, everyone on the face of a title must sign the duplicate application, which you can imagine in some cases is a hassle for those owners that work out of town or in another place. This change would allow any owner who appears on the face of the title to make application for a duplicate. This makes the process of getting a duplicate title easier on the owners, our clerks, and our treasurers. And I phoned a friend, and he came with me. This is our deputy clerk from Park County, Hans Odie, and I may just have him walk you through the bill since he knows the nuances of all of the changes.
Okay. If you would just identify yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Hans Odie, and I'm the Deputy Park County Clerk in Cody. And so this is a bill that we asked Representative Newsom to sponsor, and this is in full support from the County Clerks Association of Wyoming. It does come from our experiences of working with titles, of course, every day in our offices. On page 2, lines 16 and 17, Mr. Chairman, this is just again conforming language and actually asking you folks to request that the county treasurers provide a sales tax exempt receipt. They're required to provide a sales tax receipt, but this tax exempt receipt would then allow county clerks to go ahead and release a title after we've made it, should there be no sales tax on a certain sale. And I can think of like ORVs, motorcycles, things like that, where sales tax is collected at the dealership. So that would be, they would go get a title in our office, or actually we would make a title. They would go to the treasurer's office, pay for their plates, and then they would bring us back a sales tax exempt receipt. And then at that time, we could release the title. So exempt receipt and a sales tax receipt, we have to have both to release the title to the new owner. On page 4, lines 13 through 15, this is conforming language that got left behind from legislation that was passed 2 years ago. We came to you folks for the purpose of requesting that we could have any owner sign off on a title as long as it was not held in a conjunctive or joint tenants. You passed that. When we passed that, we left behind mobile homes, excuse me. So again, it's just conforming language to what's already in motor vehicle statute. Page 5 at the bottom, the new section D, same thing with Romanets I, and III on page 6. Again, conforming language to motor vehicle statute. In duplicate titles, this is also conforming for the purpose of applying for a duplicate title. Owner means any one person listed on the ownership face of the title. So when a person comes in and requests or applies for a duplicate title, there may be 2 owners, there may be 3 or 4 owners on a title, right? But they need to get a duplicate title. They've lost their title. It's been lost by the bank. It's been lost in their safe. Who knows where it might be, but it happens on a daily basis in our offices across the state. What this allows them to do is, even if there's more than one owner, then they have to, it allows one of those people that it's on the face of that title to go ahead and apply for a duplicate title. There's still is ownership by the other 3 people or 2 people or 1 person or whatever it may be. And they still have to sign off on the title when they sell. So there shouldn't be any issue there. Again, that's just conforming as well. And then Representative Newsom brought up a question about the word any being inserted into on page 5, line 4. It says, except as provided by Wyoming Statute 312502, any owner, any replacing every owner of a mobile home located in this state for which no titles had been made or issued. So what has happened back 20 or 30, 40 years ago, mobile homes weren't required to be titled, okay? And now they're required to be titled to be moved. So these older mobile homes that have been sitting on a lot for 30, 40 years, they may not have had a title. And owners may have changed 3 or 4 or 5 times, who knows, depending on, whether it just sits in a mobile home lot or park and never gets moved. People don't realize that mobile homes have titles and they need to be part of the transfer of ownership. And so what this does is it just says that now any owner of a mobile home located in this state, meaning any one of us who is the new owner, would go to the county clerk, go through the process of obtaining a duplicate title, so that they could then transfer the title and the mobile home could be moved off that lot. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions or sit.
Questions for Mr. Odie? Questions? Okay. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Hans, for your good work.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
This and other things that we know about. So on this page 5, where you want to put any up here on line 4, I notice that, in the other 2 areas where the transfer language is applied, there's some clarifying language when there's more than one owner. You understand what I'm saying? No?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, I'm not understanding your question. I apologize.
Okay, so when you have a conjunctive situation, right, where there's more than one owner, you have co-owners, I get that you want to, for convenience or facilitate the transfer process, you want to have any owner be able to apply for a certificate. What happens in a case where there's co-owners? Maybe they're not in the same location.
Mr. Odie?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Henderson, what this allows them to do then is that any owners, so you and I own a mobile home together, and you're out of the state working in wherever, whatever, then I can then go in on behalf of the two of us and get a new title so that that title can then be transferred as we've sold it to another party.
Follow-up, Representative Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So along those lines then, how do we make sure that we don't set up a situation where a co-owner may want to sell a a mobile home or something like that without the consent of others who have an ownership interest?
Mr. Odie?
Mr. Chairman, the duplicate title is applied for, and then if the title is held in a conjunctive, then both owners would still have to sign off on that.
That answers my question.
Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, knowing what an ordeal it can be sometimes when you have an older trailer and you need to get a VIN inspection. I'm just wondering if it would be a good idea to address VIN inspections in here, because now you're going to have a trailer that's immovable. And the question is going to be, well, where's the VIN? Don't even know. Who's going to take a look at it? You know, law enforcement is very busy. So just wondering if we should address that.
Mr. Odie?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative McGuire, thank you for the question. It's a very good one. Presently, whenever, and I can speak for our office in Park County, that whenever we have an issue like this, we require a VIN inspection to be done already as a part of our policy. And I would think that you would see that pretty consistently across the state, that there's already a VIN inspection that's been required. And the law enforcement then obviously runs that through NCIC and their dispatch. So I don't think that we would have an issue. I would reach out to clerks and confirm that, but I don't believe that there would be an issue with adding that into statute if you were so desired. But
Follow-up, Representative McGuire?
Well, thank you. So I guess my question would be, is there some kind of a mechanism where people could do their own VIN inspection or something like that? Because again, I'm just thinking about in my county, law enforcement extraordinarily busy. You want to come out to some, place where there's this home, it could be a long ways away from, how do you get that done? So that would be my question to you. Thank you.
Mr. Odie?
Chairman Burkhart, thank you. Representative McGuire, there are only, I think, 2 or 3 entities or entities that can do VIN inspections in Wyoming. Law enforcement being one. Game and Fish can do inspections on watercraft, and then dealers can do them when they've sold their vehicle off of their lot. I can't think of any other instance where it would be anybody other than those 3 entities that could legally do a VIN inspection. So right now, no, there's no others. And I think if you were to do the research across the country, there are several states that don't require VIN inspections. There's others that allow dealers, and then others that allow emissions testing places, if they have emissions testing in their state, that they allow them to do VIN inspections as well. So,
Further questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Odie. Representative?
thank you.
Thank you
Chairman.
for coming all the way down here from Cody. Appreciate your dedication to those things you want to see in the statute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Burkhart.
Okay. We'll follow the protocol here. I'm expected. Anybody from the governor's office? Okay. Any other legislators? Okay, any agencies? Okay, with that, anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Any other public comment? Anyone online, Amanda? Okay, then I'll close public comment. And just one privilege first. Representative McGuire, I keep forgetting to look at the screen, so if you want to speak or ask a question, just interrupt, please. So, okay, committee. Okay, moved by Burt, seconded by Stiver, I think. Representative Burt, did you move the bill, or you wanted a question?
I just wanted a correction. I was Representative Obermueller's on the screen. Mike Guire's sitting beside the screen.
Oh, okay. It was a short night, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who hung with us, it was a very short night. And it's getting shorter by the minute, I think, so I apologize for that. Thank you for the correction. Okay. So that was moved by O'Hearn and seconded by Stiver. Okay, thank you. Committee? I guess just work the bill. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8 and 9. Oh, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be for discussion purposes, and maybe it would be a good interim topic, but I would just like to see some kind of a mechanism, and I'm thinking about some of these old mobile homes that have actually been built into a house, and who knows where the VIN even is. So I'd just like to see some kind of have us think about some kind of a mechanism where people would be able to still get a title and not have, again, you bring in law enforcement. It's not their job to crawl around in the bottom of that thing and try and find a VIN number. So I'd just like to see if we could find some way to take care of that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I think that probably is best as an interim topic. I know of one where the entire house was built over a mobile home, and then the mobile home was disassembled inside and hauled out the front door. So how do you do that? That was just interesting to me, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We demolish and move a lot of buildings out of the city I live in, and most of the requirements are you will not set a new mobile home if it's less than 25 years old. So a lot of those things, if you don't need a VIN to move and demolish a mobile home, and most of the new ones have the VINs already established, and the mobile home manufacturers from HUD on the house.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, no amendments. Committee? Question being called. Diana, would you please take the roll?
Representative Baker?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Burt?
Aye.
Representative Henderson? Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart? That's
Okay.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Diana. So Representative Newsom, I assume you'll floor manage this. Okay, thank you. Mr. Odie, again, thank you. You're welcome to stay, but thank you again for coming all this way. It shows that dedication to those things you'd like to see us do. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on to House Bill 64, Vehicle Service Contracts. And Representative Brown, if you'd take us through your bill, and thank you for going to the table. I think that keeps some decorum in here. And
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. We're a fierce bunch up there. You guys kind of scary from down here, so. Mr. Chairman, I bring before you House Bill 64, Vehicle Service Contracts. I did bring this bill last year, however, we ran out of time and it did not make it through the finish line, so I'm bringing it back again this year. This is really a consumer protection bill and just trying to update some statutes to make everything align. Service contracts are a valuable enhancement to consumers when purchasing vehicles, especially in these times with costs skyrocketing, components not being covered by typical warranties. It is time to update Wyoming statutes to be in line with how these products are treated in other states. This bill also provides for consumer protection in that it requires all providers to abide by our service contract statutes. This bill will amend the existing statutory definition of service contracts to expressly authorize the replacement of motor vehicle keys and key fobs if it becomes inoperable, is lost, or stolen, as well as coverage for excess wear and tear and use of a leased vehicle, or for the replacement of windshield damages by road hazards. The legislation also clarifies that theft protection programs and their accompanying warranties shall not be considered insurance. This bill further defines the term road hazard and incidental payment for clarity. Mr. Chairman, turning to the bill, this bill modifies statutes in Title 26, our insurance code. Starting on page 2 of the bill, line 5, we add a new subsection, Romanet 8, excluding theft protection warranties from the insurance code and making them subject to Chapter 49 title Service Contracts. Next, at line 18, we insert theft protection programs and warranties in their rightful place under service contracts. Moving to page 3, we go on to theft protection and the long list of what service contract means. And at line 22, we clean up the language to better refine the practices with these contracts. On page 4, lines 12 through page 5, line 4 refines the language associated with excess wear and tear for leased vehicles, a new provision, followed by new definition of incidental theft protection program payment. Mr. Chairman, inside your packet, you do have a proposed amendment that adds some clarifying language on line 10. This was brought to us after the draft was released to the insurance commissioner. The insurance commissioner just had some clarifying language, and that's what this particular amendment does, is just kind of appeases some of the language that we have from Utah. Page 6 is a definition of road hazard that were removed from the language on page 3. And Mr. Chairman, I do have a proposed amendment that you'll have with this. What it does bring in is the definitions and the provisions from Utah that align and provide additional clarity to the definitions and practices of the industry. Mr. Chairman, that's the nutshell of this bill. This truly is just updating our current code and our current statute to more directly align with the way that these products are handled in other states. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Representative Brown? Any questions? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from a high level, I believe I understand why there would be a desire to take this out of the insurance code. My question is for the consumer, and not to cast aspersions, but obviously this is a source of a lot of unhappiness when there are misunderstandings, let's say with these types of products. At that point, who does the consumer turn to for help or protection in that matter? So thank you.
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, that's a great question, and my assumption is that that would end up going back to the Secretary of State and/or through the Attorney General's office for any type of issues associated with that. The insurance commissioner is in the room, as well as industry leaders that have had this issue with other states. And just if I misspeaking with that, I'm sure they'll be able to correct me, but that's my assumption.
Other questions? Questions? Okay, thank you, Representative. And Representative, the amendment, do you want to address that as we consider amendments? If you want to walk us through it real quick, but that's where I would rather consider it.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The amendment is fairly benign to what the intent of the bill is. If you do look at it, I think it's fairly self-clarifying that it's adding a good chunk of definitions to our statute, to our code, to make sure that we have an understanding of what is covered, what is not covered. And that's specifically laid out in statute as opposed to being up for debate through rule regulation or anything along those lines, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative, stay there just a minute, please, because I do have a question. Starting on page 3, you have Romanet 9, and then you have B. Then you go over to page 4, and you have C and E and F. Just so I'm clear, is in C, I'm on line 7, page 4, repair of small windshield chips or cracks in or the replacement of the entire windshield is that as a result of road hazards, is that included or excluded from those things that would be in a vehicle protection plan?
Mr. Chairman, if you go back to page 3 and look at line 16 through 18, service contract also includes a contract agreement for one or more of the following. So it does include, and when you go through there, it going down to C does include, does not
Okay.
exclude.
Thank you, Representative. I just wanted to be sure we were all clear on that. So, and then it would also include on page 4, line 12, replacement of the key fob or key.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. That's actually where the original version of this bill last year was expressly just trying to open this up for the replacement key fobs as part of these service contracts. It took a little bit further turn upon looking at some other states throughout the interim as I was working on this to open it up a little bit more and make sure that we had more clarifying terms.
Okay, so Representative, does that mandate including the key fobs? Is it a may or a shall? I'm just curious, just so we're all clear. It doesn't really say either one in the existing statute, so that's why I asked the question.
Mr. Chairman, that will probably be a better question directed at Mr. Pickard, but I do believe it's a may. I don't believe it's a requirement that they're covered underneath those, but it expressly allows them to be covered.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions for Representative Brown? So Representative, I guess you can come back up here and join the rest of us. With that, again, anyone from the governor's office? Okay, any other representatives, senators? I know they just flocked to this committee. Any agencies?
Mr. Chairman, hello, my name is Jeff Rood, committee members. I'm the insurance commissioner. We were approached with this bill by Mr. Pickard and basically trying to update the service contracts and what they included. Our department registers all of these service contract providers. They actually make an application with our office and we review them, and there's a fee and we make sure there's some financial responsibility there. And then we issue, in essence, register them. The industry wanted to include in these service contracts, like you heard, key fobs, theft protection, road hazard, and excess wear. And these are some of the things we've seen in other states. We did work on the amendment, as Representative Brown mentioned. We thought some of the Utah language, actually, when you read it, it was fairly clear. It helped to just make it easier to understand when you read what was covered and what it could include. We're neutral on the bill, like most agencies are on these things, but obviously we have no major concerns with the amendments. I'd be remiss as a commissioner if I didn't say that we didn't get a chance to put together a fiscal note. We will say this will increase some work. There's over 200 of these companies. They will still be registered with us, but as soon as they put these new provisions in those service contracts, they come back to our office and we review them to make sure they're in compliance with all the requirements in the statute. To loop back to Representative McGuire's question, if there's a complaint by a consumer, it will come to our office. And we'll look at it. There's 212 of these companies. There are some known bad actors and we do get calls. We do. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions for the commissioner? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just reading as quickly as I can, and 26.1.104 is a long provision. But with regard to removing theft protection programs, was that something that was discussed? Or tell me about that. And then I'm looking at page 2 of the bill, lines 3 through 8.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire.
Commissioner?
Insurance still covers theft. That's in your contract with your insurance company. This is a theft protection program. In addition to that, this allows the programs to then fall under, be considered a service contract, separate and apart from insurance, if that answers your question.
Follow-up, Representative? Okay, all right. Any other questions for the Commissioner? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Commissioner, you mentioned something about the amendment. You haven't done the physical, you do know about the amendment and you were fully aware of all this amendment, correct? But you just didn't do a fiscal note on it?
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, correct. When the bill was first drafted, we weren't sent a fiscal note. The amendment wouldn't impact that one way or the other. We just wanted clarifying language.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could on that.
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely in no way, shape, or form the insurance commission's fault or commissioner's fault. That just relies on me and my delay on putting this through. So as it got too close to session, I put it through and LSO did not submit enough time for the commissioner to put together a fiscal note.
Okay, all right. Other questions? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along that line, if this bill moves forward, would we be able to have one provided for us?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, I'd be happy to do one. I will tell you what it will say is, we're not going to ask for more people. We're not going to ask for more money. But I would say that we're going to have one person in our office who specializes in this, and she quite possibly would now be required to review 1,000 to 2,000 new service contracts to ensure that it complies with language, which will slow the process down. Once again, that's not enough for me to justify a whole another person. It's just one of the additional things we'll do. And at some point, I might come down with a long list before the committee and at some point ask for more people. But this won't be the time.
Other question? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just can't resist. What is a theft protection program?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, it is where you contract with one of these service contract providers for specific, you have your own contract. It would reference the theft protection. It might be the device in your vehicle, make sure it wasn't defective. It might help you pay for those costs that insurance wouldn't under your other contract. We spell out some of the things that could be considered a theft protection program. Like etchings, for example, you can actually have your VIN number etched in glass anywhere on your vehicle. It's considered an additional theft protection device. It's a separate contract under the service contract to help with any costs if your vehicle is then stolen.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
One word for it would be, and I think most of the committee would be aware of it, is something like LoJack, where you're able to ping your car with a GPS, something along those lines that the dealer sells, those types of contracts.
Other questions for the Commissioner? Hey, Commissioner, then I have one. You said you have 212 companies and probably the potential for several thousand of these applications. With an effective date of July 1 of 2022, is that adequate time for you?
Mr. Chairman, I think I don't anticipate all 212 incorporating this all at the same time. I think it'll be in the next quarter. I think we'll see a rush of these. We'll get to them. It just might take a little bit longer than we normally would, and they may not get approval for these particular contracts as they normally would, as quickly as they normally would.
Okay.
I think once the year goes on, there'll be fewer and fewer.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, with that, thank you, Commissioner. Just hang with us. We may have other questions. So if you would. So any other state agencies? Okay. I guess with that then, it's full-on public comment. I know all of you are just waiting excitedly to do this. Yeah. Anyone else? I'm just going to ask. I know we have someone online to speak to this. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay, it's just Mr. Pickard. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Pickard,
committee.
continue.
My name is Dave Pickard. I represent the Motor Vehicle Protection Products Association. I appreciate Representative Brown bringing this bill before the committee and appreciate this opportunity to talk through it. Representative Brown did a fantastic job of laying out the need for the bill and for some more specifics on precisely the questions that have come up. I'm going to turn to Lance Lozano with the association itself, if I can, on the Zoom.
Amanda, is Mr. Lozano in? Mr. Lozano, if you would continue, please. Please identify yourself just for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lance Lozano, and I represent the Motor Vehicle Protection Products Association. I apologize I can't be with you in person today, but thank you for allowing me the virtual options to testify. The Motor Vehicle Protection Products Association supports House Bill 64 relating to motor vehicle service contracts and debt protection warranties. These agreements and products are sold primarily by auto dealers and provide financial protection against damage to or theft of motor vehicles. By way of background, the MVPBA is a national trade association with member companies that include providers, retailers, administrators, and insurers of protection products. Their goals is to establish a uniform, balanced regulatory landscape that minimizes confusion or dispute about the regulatory status of these products. Our members' companies offer over 80% of the protection products available in the marketplace today, including such companies as Ally Insurance, Trust Financial Services, Assurance Solutions, Toyota, Motor Insurance Services, and CNA National Warranty Company. This bill will amend the existing statutory definition of service contract, especially authorized replacement of motor vehicle key or key fobs if they become inoperable or lost or stolen, as well as provide coverage for excess wear and use of a leased vehicle or for replacement of windshields damaged by road hazards. The legislation also clarifies that theft protection programs or accompanying warranties shall not be considered insurance when the bill defines the terms road hazard and accidental payments for repair. This will bring Wyoming statutes in line with how most of these products are treated in a majority of other states. Most of the products that I have described that are considered in this bill are pretty self-explanatory. I'll just want to go into a little more in-depth definition of excess wear and use, or like we like to call it EWU. That's a product that you can buy on a leased vehicle. Usually when you buy a leased vehicle, you have the ability to, or you are restrained by the amount of miles that you can put on that car before you return the vehicle. And you can also be responsible for dings, tears, rips, stains, other types of small items that might go wrong to a car before you return it. If those items are not repaired at your expense, you can be charged a fee by the automobile dealership where you leased the vehicle and return the vehicle. This product can provide protection for you, so you would be exempt from having to pay for the cost of those damages or reimbursed for the cost of those damages that may have occurred, or excess mileage you may have gone over that the contract allowed to be covered on a leased vehicle. I'll answer one other question that was thrown out there about the effective date. I think our members would be okay with the ability to push back the effective date if that's something the committee finds necessary in doing. And also, as the commissioner also explained, they're going to take some time having to review these files and the forms that are going to be submitted to the department if this bill becomes law. The individuals that we've left waiting for those forms would be our members. So if this bill passes, I think they would be patient and have the ability to wait on the department to review the necessary forms and make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsor of this legislation, as well as the Commissioner of Insurance here in Wyoming. We do appreciate his willingness to work with us on some of the language. As mentioned, we brought in a provision from Utah law that they thought was a better option than what we had proposed. So we wanted to thank their office and the Commissioner for working with us on the proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your time. And again, we support the bill.
Any questions for Mr. Lozano or for Mr. Pickard? Questions? No? Mr. Pickard, do you have something further?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if I might just add, just to put this in context, the key fob legislation that is in front of you is operating in 43 states plus DC and Puerto Rico. The theft protection language is in over 20 states currently. And as Representative Brown discussed, a little bit of a change from last year's legislation that did not move. The excess wear and use provisions is in operation in 7 states and counting. We're kind of at the front end of the 2020 legislative session throughout the rest of the state. So it is moving forward as well. So I thought that would just be helpful for you to know that we're not leading the way. We're just updating this in a lot of respects to what's going on in the marketplace. With that, I'll stand for any additional questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard. Any additional questions? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
And I'll ask one last time if there's any more testimony from anyone on this. With that, I'll close public testimony. Committee? Okay, moved by O'Hearn, seconded by Stiver. Okay, work the bill, and there is a proposed amendment, and we'll just hold that till we get to it. Although the amendment does start on page 1 with a minor change, that just conforming language. Okay, page 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and Representative Brown, why don't you walk us through this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, as stated
Well,
earlier.
first, do you want to move the amendment?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I would move the proposed amendment that's attached here for everybody. As previously stated, this is.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, we need a
Was there
second.
okay, seconded by Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as previously mentioned, this is just the updated language that the Insurance Commissioner's Office brought forward as recommended changes to the language of the bill to ensure that we have everything lined out and there is no confusion listed within the statute. We come down into here with the theft protection program and explain exactly what that is. And to provide a little bit more clarity of exactly what that is, again, that would be something along the lines of LoJack, but it also goes through and shows what this may include, but is not limited to. And then down on lines 35, 36, 37, and then going back over to page 2, lines 1 through 5, this just goes into meaning, I'll just read it. Means a written agreement by a warrantor that provides that if a theft protection program fails to prevent the loss or the damage of the vehicle, the warrantor will pay on behalf of the warranty holder specified incidental theft protection program payments as a result of the failure of the theft protection program to perform pursuant to the terms of the theft protection program warranty. So ultimately, just basically staying it, it's not necessarily the insurance side of things. It's a program that you're locking into. So that's the amendment in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman. And if there's any questions on that, I'd call the question.
Any discussion on the amendment? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if my understanding is correct, so this will be taken out. It will definitely not be an insurance product. So my question is, if a consumer has an issue and the entity who has issued this protection program doesn't want to pay, or is out of state, or is just all around difficult to try and get money out of, what is the what's the best step for the consumer to move forward and to get relief? Thank you.
Representative Brown.
Excuse me. Mr. Chairman, as discussed by the insurance commissioner, a direct complaint filed to the commissioner's office would be where that would lie, and then that would be investigated and turned over for anything along those lines, Mr. Chairman.
Follow-up, Representative?
Well, I do, because if it's specifically not an insurance product, then I'm missing something. There's a connection here that's missing. We do have the commissioner here, if you don't mind, maybe.
Commissioner, come on back up if you would, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Jeff Rood, the Insurance Commissioner, Representative McGuire. You're right, it's not defined as insurance, we still have authority over the product. And we actually oversee many things that are excluded from insurance. We would register this company if there was a number of complaints against this company. We have the authority to investigate. We have the authority to pull their registration. And then there's a whole administrative hearing process. But we help the consumers. It's not technically insurance, but it still follows under our department for the authority over the entity that we registered.
Follow up? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Again, if you would just hang out with us for a while. Okay, so we're on the amendment. Any other discussion? Questions? Question being called. All in favor of Amendment 1? And I'll just want to be clear, Diana, you have a copy of this, please, correct? Thank you. Okay. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Discussion? Question being called. Diana, would you please take roll?
Representative Baker. Representative Brown. Representative Burt. Representative Henderson. Representative McGuire. Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn. Representative Stivar. Chairman Burkhart. So 9 ayes, and it passes with amendments.
Okay, and Representative Brown, I assume you'll be floor managing the bill and the amendment?
Got it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm thinking here. We had next up Senate File 35, and I take it that, Commissioner, thank you very much. And I'm foreseeing a lot of testimony on this. I just want to ask a question, because we have the military department here. Anyone here wish to speak on Senate File 45? Any public wants to speak on that bill? Because the military department showed up, I'm inclined, I'm going to take that bill first. It's fairly straightforward. I just want to get it off the list. I apologize, and then we will take up 35 because I think there's going to be a fair amount of discussion on 35. If we do not finish that today, we'll carry it over until next Tuesday. It is a Senate file, and we can do that. So, General, Mr. Smith, Major Maury, if you all want to come down, fine. If not, whoever gets in the hot seat. General, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Major General Greg Porter, and I serve as the Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming. If just to remind the committee, this was an interim topic, sort of late in the process, and what we were attempting to do here was to codify the report that was voluntarily provided to the committee on sexual assault and sexual harassment, and just make sure that that sustains itself following my services as the Adjutant General, and it's something that the military department continues to drive on. This was just an opportunity that this report is intended to go to the Commander-in-Chief, Governor Gordon, and also to this committee, just to provide some visibility and some information on the steps we take in the military department to root out sexual assault and sexual harassment. So that's, I think, very simply put where we're at.
All right, and the committee did consider this at our meeting in December and then a subsequent meeting in January. Any questions for the General? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and General. At the last meeting, I had inquired about getting prior year's reports. Is it possible for a follow-up on that?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, this was the first year of reporting that we had done. This voluntary report is the first time we've done it. And I'm sorry, Representative Baker, if I misunderstood. Certainly, I can talk about specific numbers of cases prior to this, and particularly on the sexual assault side. But this is the first opportunity this last year, is the only report that we've done.
Representative follow-up, or, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions for General Porter, Mr. Smith? Okay, all right. Thank you, General. Just hang with us for a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I already asked this question, but I'll ask it again. Any other public testimony, any agencies, governor's office, anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll close public testimony. Committee?
Move the bill.
Moved by Brown, seconded by O'Hearn. Committee? Any amendments? We've all seen this. In that. So page 1, page 2, page 3. Okay. All right. All right. Question being called. Diana, please take the roll.
Representative Baker? Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Burt? Representative Henderson? Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermuller? Representative O'Hearn? Representative Stivar? Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
9 ayes, do
Thank-
pass.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, any volunteers to floor manage? Okay, Representative Brown, although I will ask Representative will you be back next week, do you think?
Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping to be back Monday. I actually have the combination of COVID and strep throat, so I'm pretty weak, but I hope to be back Monday.
Yes, Representative, stay home and get better, please. Or we'll all be in like anti-contamination suits or something when you get back, so.
Well, I was very respectful on the front end and got out of there before I saw anybody.
Thank you. And do the same on the back end. Your health is more important. You can participate in this manner, so get better.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I don't think anyone in the room wants you to come back right away either. So, thank you. Just hang with us. Okay, General, thank you very much. We'll get this handled on the floor. Okay, and for the rest of the people here, thank you for your patience in letting us get that bill out. So the next bill up is Senate File 35, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations Regulation Exemption. And I see a number of people here. So this was a committee bill. Anyone want to walk us through this bill? It's just the military department leaving. Okay, all right, so. No one's in. Commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Throne, I take it that this room is a little chilly for you.
Well, I've been cold for several days now.
I think we all have. So if you would just, thank you for volunteering.
I was afraid you weren't going to get to this in time, and I
We
was
will
going to
get
have
to
to
it.
leave. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mary Throne with the Wyoming Public Service Commission. The purpose of this bill is to do what we did, something similar to what we did back when I was on that side of the table with natural gas, compressed natural gas for vehicles. The definition of a public utility is broad. If you provide electricity, even in the form of a charging station, arguably, you could be considered a public utility. So, which is the same issue we faced years ago with compressed natural gas. So all the bill does is say that if a local convenience store puts up a charger, they have not made themselves a public utility. So it's sort of the first step in dealing with this emerging issue.
Okay. And Representative Throne, am I correct that the Public Service Commission requested this change?
We did,
Okay, thank you. Please just hang with us.
sure.
And I do remember when we did it for compressed natural gas vehicles. So any questions for Commissioner Throne? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of my questions, and this is related to the bill, but not directly. So one of the major manufacturers of electric vehicles, that name sounds like salsa, you can go and plug in, and through their software, they allow that person to have I guess you pre-purchase a certain amount with the vehicle, and so then that is charged directly to the owner's account. Since we're obviously worrying about or trying to calculate how to charge vehicles for the actual road usage, as is returned to us through a fuel tax, my question to you is it possible through the use of electricity via an account for the state to somehow reach out and get a equitable amount from these electric vehicle users? Not trying to, nothing overage, but the same amount that you would, that we would recover from people using an internal combustion engine. Thank you.
Commissioner Throne, do you really want to address that one? Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to punt that question. I haven't really thought about that. Electricity is taxed, there's sales tax on electricity. So I think General Reiner, Director Reiner, has thought more about the taxation issues than we have. But we do tax electricity, I can say that much.
Commissioner, thank you. If you would just bear with us for a while. Any other, I'm sorry, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. So if this bill passes and these charging stations are not regulated by your organization, does it just leave it to local building codes? Is that what we're moving towards?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, the provision of electricity to those charging stations from some of the people sitting behind me, excuse me, Representative Baker, I didn't say hello. Mr. Chairman, the regulation of the provision of that electricity would still be regulated by tariffs and whatever mechanisms are put in place by the utilities.
Right.
But the physical location of the charging station would fall to local government, I assume.
Other questions for Commissioner Throne? Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Oh, be a little quicker.
Yes, sorry
Representative
about
O'Hearn.
that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think where we're going, Commissioner, is how we can figure out if a charging station at the local Loaf and Jug or in somebody's garage, if those people are using the road more than what our fuel tax is paying for. That make sense?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, I think, that is a concern. How we continue to pay for roads, I think is a concern that we can all share. But I believe, again, that General Reiner has considered this issue in more depth than we have.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So now, just one thing for the committee. Remember, all we're talking about here is exempting the charging stations from being a public utility. How we actually charge for whatever is another matter, I think. So with that, I guess we'll open it for kind of public comment. I see the director's just anxiously waiting to come and inform us of some more ideas. So Director Reiner, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Luke Reiner, Director YDOT. Just probably a couple comments on this. One is, so what's Luke Reiner's interest in electric charging stations? The reality is we have the ROSE for the implementation of electrical vehicle charging stations across the state, and are currently working on a plan to do just that, using various pots of money. There's $27 million over the next 5 years in IDJA that's coming. There's a lot of money in discretionary grants also in IDJA that's coming. And there is actually a little over $1 million in the VW settlement money that's available. And our task is to synchronize different pots of money and disparate entities across the state into really a synchronized, cohesive, deliberate implementation plan. Because the tricky thing about electrical vehicles is you got to have power, every so often to proceed down the road. And so that's the overall goal. Our timeline is we do have a draft plan. We have a date after the session to brief the governor, and we intend to be on the road seeking public input the first full week in April. So we'll be in your area, and we'll look forward to seeing you as we progress. Now, just a couple thoughts. One is the federal goal with the IDJA money, specifically the $27 million, is the build out of corridors. In this case, we've identified 3, I-80, I-25, I-90. Task and purpose is that you can take a vehicle and drive from the East Coast to the West or the North to the South. Certainly, we're part of that national corridor. Additionally, why this is so important is while I don't anticipate a lot of people in Wyoming running out and buying an electric vehicle, others in our nation will, and others in our nation who buy those will wish to come be tourists in our state. And I see it very important that for us to support the economy of this state in terms of tourism, that we are, deliberate and fairly quick about in placing these corridors. After those first 3 that I identified, we have some additional ones identified that all sort of go towards Yellowstone and the northwest corner of the state. So that's sort of the big strategic importance in where we're going. There are some challenges as we deal with IDJA and the rule set. So the rule set says basically, hey, for you to get this $27 million, you need to submit us a plan. The plan is due in August. We'd like to have it in before that. No money's released until they approve the plan. Part of having that plan approved is we certainly have to minimize utility fees, minimize demand charges, provide high-speed charging for travelers, and the list is fairly extensive. One of the large hurdles for us is also right now a federal mandate that I don't know if we're going to be able to get a waiver on. In fact, I don't think it's likely, is a charging station every 50 miles. All right. So you look at I-80, there's some places that are problematic in terms of having power there. Specifically, if you look at in between Laramie and Rollins, and probably Rollins and Rock Springs, there's some challenges for us there as we go down the road. There are some technical solutions that are available and that would fit sort of basically self-generation in terms of power for those areas. Obviously other options are to drag power in from somewhere to power those stations. In terms of, so that sort of gets us to this bill. And we certainly support this bill as it's currently written. It is broad in nature, and it allows lots of flexibility in terms of addressing the technical and distance and various challenges that we face in this space. And fundamentally, it says, hey, listen, you are not a utility as long as, as you distribute electrical power, as long as you're charging vehicles. And that's what it does for us. And we think it's good. As we discussed it with the PSC, they're very comfortable in this space and in the current construct of the bill. The other item that I would add is, Mr. Chairman, we owe you interim topics. The discussion of electrification of the highways will be very high on that list, because I think there are some things we need to talk to. One of them is the questions that you ask about, basically a road user charge for electric vehicles. Certainly that's on the list and high on items for us to take care of. But what I'd say is the interim topic is an opportunity for us, as we go through in more depth, the opportunity to adjust any statute across the board that we need to. And Mr. Chairman, that would be my sort of quick elevator speech about where we're at and what we think about this bill and why.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Any questions for Director Reiner? Any questions? Okay. Representative Stiver, but one moment, please. This is one I know we can get very far afield very quickly. For right now, I'd like to say, and I know there's an amendment, and I know there may be I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. All right. I want to say on this whether they're a public utility or not. I know we'd like to ask a lot of questions about charges and money and all of that, but I'd like to concentrate on the issue of whether or not these charging stations are a public utility. So if we could stick to that, please. We may have some time to go afield on some other issues, but so right now, any questions for the director? You have one? Okay, Representative Stiver, I guess you were going far afield. I am tempted also. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Bear with us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick.
Okay, Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman and Director, right before I left the Department of Environmental Quality, there was a good working group going on with the electrification of highways and stuff like that. Is that working group still up and operational? And are you guys still coinciding with the EQ on some of the money that was available through the VW settlement as well?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, yes. In fact, YDOT has the lead on the working group. They're meeting frequently. This is, and DEQ is part of that group. And there's about 8 state agencies that are involved. I mean, it's a multifaceted interagency. And I would also share in terms of meetings, my thanks to the utility companies and to the PSC. The PSC did host what they called a technical conference, looking for solutions to some of these issues that we've identified. And certainly as we've worked with utilities, everybody recognizes that this will be a lift, and it's a lift that we accomplish together across the state to further better the state. And we've got some great partnerships going and a great working relationships as we go down this road.
Any other questions for the director? Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, with that, let's see, I think I don't see anybody jumping up and down, so it's any other public testimony now. Mr. Bush, please.
There we go. Mr. Chairman, David Bush with Black Hills Energy. Apologize for the informalities earlier, shouting across the room. We did have an amendment that we had put together with some of our other utilities, and in talking to the Public Service Commission out in the hall and the director for YDOT, General Reiner, we're going to withdraw the amendment. I'm withdrawing it on behalf of Black Hills at this time. I'm not sure my colleagues totally agree or maybe have other thoughts, but Mr. Taylor had to leave to go to a family obligation, but he also said the co-ops would support at this time withdrawing this amendment. We think our concerns with the legislation as it stands now were answered by conversation with the Public Service Commission and ensuring that our concerns stem from these EV stations setting up self-generation and then starting to resell power that would bring them back into the Public Service Commission, which is what we didn't want and what they don't want. We ran into that in South Dakota. So our folks in South Dakota had sent some language like this to just make sure that that didn't happen. But PSC and has assured me that they don't think that would be the case. So at this time, we'll stand in favor of the language as it is.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, in the other state, what was the source of the regeneration tower?
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, I believe it was solar. That's usually the easiest way to do it, is to set up and I'm kind of new to the EV charging station world, but they were setting up a station, putting a solar array on top. And as soon as they were, South Dakota code may be different on this aspect, but they were generating and then they were selling that power that was generated from the solar. So in their Public Service Commissioner's opinion, it pulled them back into being a utility at that point. Our Public Service Commissioner has assured us that as long as it's with the statute or the legislation the way it's written, as long as they are selling just to electric vehicles, that would not apply in this case. So we're comfortable with the language the way it is, and we don't certainly want to stand in the way of the deployment for the Department of Transportation.
Follow-up, Representative Baker?
Yeah, just briefly. So just so I understand, and I'm understanding the legislation correctly, because there was some confusion. So is it your understanding that these are going to be able to self-generate just as long as they're not selling, or they're not going to be able to self-generate at all?
They would be able,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman, they would be able to self-generate, yes. And that's what I think Director Reiner is saying with that every 50-mile issue where you have stretches of road that it would be very expensive, almost cost prohibitive to stretch the power that you would need for these EV charging stations. They're going to have to self-generate along the I-80 or wherever they might be in order to serve that and do it cost effectively. So with the explanation from the Public Service Commission, we feel that the legislation's good the way it is and that we won't run afoul of anything, so.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Just to be clear, what's your position in those situations where you have a residence or a business, like a hotel?
Mr. Bush.
And these are installed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I quite understand, like, would we be okay? Sorry, go ahead.
Representative Henderson.
Just to clarify, on the self-generating aspect of it.
Mr. Chairman, so we have, not necessarily in this committee, but we've talked in other committees about net metering is the process by which somebody puts solar panels on the roof at home. They generate electricity and then it's balanced out from their use and everything. The same can be done at a residence or at a business. The trick becomes if they're interconnected. If they're connected to our poles and wires, then there's a limit on that 25 kW. If they're self-generating, which happens out in the oil patch all the time, 5, 10, 15 megawatts, whatever they need, they can do that no problem under the PSC guidelines as long as they're not interconnected.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, sir. I hope I didn't confuse the matter anymore.
No. So anyone else here? Yes, Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. As a guy that spent 30 years in the submarine force, batteries are near and dear to my heart. And I think as you look at these things, consider the utility or not utility, you need to think about your roads in February at minus 20 degrees because battery capacities drop tremendously with temperature, and that will get to spacing of chargers, how many charging ports you have at each of those locations, and those kind of things. give you an example. Your lead acid battery in your car is rated at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. At 32 degrees, it drops by 50% of capacity. At 0 degrees, it drops by another 50%. And so if you think February, Elk Mountain, minus 20 degrees, that car that had a 300-mile range now has a 75-mile range or something like that. So like I said, it gets back to that spacing issue. And that could in turn become a safety issue. I could spend more time talking about other aspects of batteries, but you are focused on the utility thing. I would just remark that if gasoline is not a utility, the electricity shouldn't be either. And I think Director Reiner will have good ways of figuring that out. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, please. And for the committee, Mr. Kaysen said that he has no comments from Rocky Mountain Power on this. Please identify yourself.
If I could, my name is Bruce Acey, and I'm here today on behalf of Montana Dakota Utilities Company. It's a utility company that provides electrical power in the north central part of the state. It also has services in a number of other states that are adjacent to us, as well as systems in Idaho and Oregon. With respect to this, I had come to support the amendment, but that's off the table, and I don't want to stop that. But I do think that the idea of exceptions, particularly with respect to public utilities, and I'm representing a public utility, are somewhat difficult because of the unintended consequences. And so I'm mainly here to say I'm not going to object to the bill that it is proposed, but to give some warning that I think that is a little more complicated, and we do need to talk about it a little more, particularly when you look at the exceptions that we do have. If a hotel, that's not a public utility. A mall might not be a public utility. A mobile home park might not be a public utility if they have a master meter and they abide by certain requirements. But there are a lot of protocols and regulations that have been developed over time with respect to the regulation. And so I haven't had an opportunity to speak with the director with respect to his concern. I think it could have been addressed. But at this stage, on behalf of my client, we're not going to oppose the bill as it's proposed to you at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Acey? Committee? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and I think we have, well, first, anyone else in the room? Okay, all right. Then with that, we'll go to the virtual land.
Mr. Chairman, we have Mr. Justin Ackley.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burkhardt.
Please
can
continue.
everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for indulging my remote attendance. I apologize for not being there in person. My name is Justin Ackley. I represent ChargePoint. We're the largest manufacturer of EV infrastructure in the country. This bill is extremely important to us. Just by way of background, currently 41 other states in the District of Columbia have this free market exemption in place. This would provide the competition that is needed within the marketplace to build out the EV infrastructure within the state of Wyoming. This permits the local businesses that have an interest in becoming EV chargers, whether they be your retail fuelers like your Loaf and Jug or your grocery stores like an Albertsons, to be able to get into that business by making a business case to either their owner or their board and charge by the kilowatt hour as opposed to charging by the minute or by the parking space. Currently, based off the type of charger someone would be using, if you parked somewhere and used a lower kilowatt hour per charger, you would sit there much longer and be charged a much higher rate, as opposed to a DC fast charger, which you would be there for a short period of time and only pay, say, 15 to 20 minutes worth of charge. This would permit them to make it a competitive pricing model and really be able to move forward to make the business case that would permit them to be in the EV charging business. To avoid any political landmines that may exist there, I just wanted to answer a few questions from our perspective. I believe Representative Baker asked about regulation of the charging station. Yes, the commissioner was correct that the provision of electricity would remain under the PSC, and anything that related to the equity as it relates to the measurement of electricity or the charging of electricity would most likely fall under the Department of Weights and Measures within the Department of Agriculture. That is how it's handled in Oklahoma and California and a number of other states. So I would anticipate that it would move forward in the same way. The National Institute of Standards is currently working on a tolerance for the meters so that everybody gets a fair shake, similar to the way gas pumps are regulated, so that when you pay for a gallon of gas, you get a gallon of gas. Same way that we were regulated by EV chargers. The other thing that I wanted to address quickly is Representative Henderson, I believe, asked about residential versus commercial. In our experience, the PSC doesn't have jurisdiction over residential chargers, so this would only be applicable to publicly available chargers, both level 2 and level 3. So we're happy to answer any additional questions. We really support this. We thank the commission and the department for their support. And we look forward to working with the Department of, with the state of Wyoming and the Department of Transportation to build out the infrastructure corridors that Wyoming so badly needs.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Ackley? Questions? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is everything being built with EVs capable of having the fast charge, the 20-minute? Or would somebody be able to blow something up if that wasn't applicable?
Mr. Ackley.
I apologize for not completely understanding the question. Currently, the marketplace is developing as such. So if this provision were to go into law today, any business that's interested in procuring EV charging, whether that be level 2, which is generally about 7.2 kW, or level 3, which is also known as DC fast charging, could do so in any way, shape, or form based off of the private equity that they would bring to the table. If, as the director was discussing with the IIJA funds, those are only level 3 DC fast charging. So those type of corridor charging or fast charging are the ones that take about 15 minutes and are regulated as such.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for answering my earlier question, sir. So my question is, as to fast charge versus regular charge.
Yes, sir.
Is there a difference in the costing, and how do you keep track of that?
Mr. Ackley.
Thank you, Chairman and Representative Henderson. There would not be. So the rates that would be charged by a competitive fueler or a grocery store, whether they be level 2, which is a slower charge, or a DC fast charger, would be regulated under the tariffs on file at the PSC. And then whatever kind of market rate that those individuals providing that service, either the loaf and jug or the Albertsons, whatever rate that they determined would be applicable in the marketplace. So that's how it would be calculated. So the base rate would be whatever it costs to generate a kilowatt hour in the state of Wyoming, plus whatever charges that the PSC has permitted the utility to recoup. All of that would go into the pricing that would be competitive in the marketplace. So if a loaf and jug installed EV charging, they would take that base rate, or for lack of a better term, I don't mean this in a different way, but a wholesale rate that they received from the local utility, they would be able to then add, a competitive market rate to that, similar to gasoline. I don't mean wholesale rate as in federal jurisdiction or anything along those lines. I'm just talking in terms of if you buy something in bulk, you get a certain price. If you buy something at retail, you get a certain price. Just a small market differential.
Follow-up, Representative Henderson?
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how do we monitor and make sure the quality of electricity is maintained and the condition of the charging stations? I'm thinking about PF factor, those kind of things.
Sure. And thank you for that question, Representative Henderson and Chairman. When we get into the regulation of the charger, we're talking about meter tolerances. And that's what I was indicating would be handled under the Department of Weights and Measures within the Department of Agriculture, most likely within the state of Wyoming. Right now, the National Institute of Standards is establishing a universal standard for the United States of right now, plus or minus 1 in a meter tolerance, to ensure that when an EV driver plugs into an EV charger, they're getting within a tolerance of 1 plus or minus 1%, exactly what the meter itself is telling you. So each individual charge point charger has an embedded meter within it. that measures each kilowatt hour as it comes out of the meter. Oftentimes there's another meter involved, which would be the retail meter, which would either be at the Loaf and Jug or the Albertsons or wherever these are installed. That's between the utility and their customer. We're talking about a meter between our customer and our driver.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Easy.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other public testimony? Mr. Winnie, we're running short on time. Does this have to do with the PSC or just electric vehicles in general? Mr. Winnie, I'm going to ask you to hold that. We'll handle that, I think, in the interim. And that, so with that, I'll close public testimony. Committee? Moved by Henderson, seconded by Stiver. Okay, it's pretty much one paragraph. Any amendments? Any discussion? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've moved the amendment as presented in front of us. If I get a second, we go ahead with that.
Okay, without a second, it's.
I think it's line 16.
The person who proposed it withdrew it, Representative.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Committee? Question being called. Diana, would you take roll, please?
Representative Baker? Aye. Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Burt?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn? Aye. Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, do pass.
Okay. So anyone want to volunteer? Representative Henderson, thank you. So committee, I know there are a lot of questions on electric vehicles, and that's probably something we can look at in the interim. We did have a bill that we decided to table for this past interim due to the potential complexity. So I think we'll take that and maybe propose that as an interim topic. And for the director's comments, Representative Yin has been participating kind of as an observer with that group, looking at electric vehicles, and he had asked me if he could do that, and I said that would be great. So I think this is one we can take up in the interim. Mr. Winnie, you may want to come back during the interim as we discuss some of the technicalities of electric vehicles and charging. And I apologize for cutting you short, but we do have to get back on the floor. So, okay, thank you. With that, one other comment, as we had said, we'd take these as we could. I appreciate the Trucking Association and the Contractor Association being here, and we'll take that. That'll be the first bill Tuesday, if that's acceptable to you. Okay, thank you.